Lilian Achieng Aluko was a 33-year-old Kenyan woman whose life was anchored in family, community, and professional purpose. Born and raised in Nairobi, she belonged to a close family network that included her mother, Lilian Achieng Aluko, and her siblings. Those who knew her described her as a grounded and connected, someone who valued her family and maintained genuine friendships within her neighborhood. She wasn't distant or detached from life. She was part of everyday rhythm of her community. In her professional life, Lilian carved out a place for herself in media. She worked as a radio presenter at Radio 44, a local station serving the Kahawa West area in Nairobi. Radio 44 is not a national broadcaster with polished studios and continent-wide reach. It's the kind of station where voices are close to listeners, where presenters know their audience by name and by common experience. In that space, Lilian's voice became familiar to people in her community. She hosted shows that connected with listeners on daily matters, local news, issues affecting families, entertainment, and community events. This was not a hobby for Lilian, it was her job. She had responsibilities, schedules, listeners who tuned in, and presence in her workplace that demanded consistency and engagement. Her colleagues at Radio 44 would remember her by how she showed up for her shifts, how she communicated with guests, and how she interacted with callers. She was not merely a voice on air, she was a working professional with a role that required preparation, communication skills, and reliability. At 33, Lilian had already built a track record in her field. She wasn't starting out fresh and she wasn't drifting without direction. She had a career, visible, acknowledged, and active. In a world where jobs in media are competitive and often unstable, Lilian had secured a steady position and was known within her professional circle. Outside of work, Lilian maintained connections to family and friends. Her mother, Jane, spoke openly about her daughter's life, about how Lilian would communicate with the family, how she would tell them her plans, and how she maintained a pattern of regular contact. Lilian was not isolated from the people who cared about her. Her relationships were open, her family knew her plans. That context matters because it shows she was not someone disappearing into secrecy. She was known, loved, and visible to her nearest circle. Part of Lilian's life included her romantic relationship with George Mwenda Mutegi. Mutegi was not a stranger to the family. Lilian's mother confirmed that he had visited their home on at least 2 occasions. He was someone they knew personally, not a distant acquaintance or a known figure. The fact that he was welcomed into the family home indicates a level of familiarity and acceptance from Lilian's side. This relationship was ongoing and recognized by those closest to her. On Thursday, October 31, 2024, Lilian informed her mother that she was going to spend the night with Mutegi. She left their home at around 11 a.m., explaining her plans plainly. There was no alarm, no distress in the message she conveyed to her family. This was not an unusual request nor an unusual arrangement. Lilian communicated her intentions with clarity. Her family was aware of where she was going, who she was with, and the basic trajectory of her day. That day, Thursday, October 31st, began like any other day in Lilian's life. She carried out her routine. She spoke with family. She prepared for her visit. She set out an understood destination and an understood companion. Nothing about her plans that morning suggested danger or risk to her mother, her brother, or her sister. To her family, it was a simple plan. Lilian was going to spend time with her boyfriend and would return home later. Lilian and Mutegi spent the evening together. They visited a local entertainment venue, a place known to both of them. Neighbors' accounts would later confirm that they were seen together that night, returning to Mutegi's 3-bedroomed apartment in Kahawa West after their visit. It was normal, it was routine, it did not alarm neighbors or family. But sometime that night, things inside that apartment changed. Neighbors living near Mutegi's house later reported that they heard sounds of an argument coming from within late into the night. The voices were loud enough to notice, but the door remained locked, and the sound system inside was playing at a high volume, drowning out the disturbance. People nearby assumed it was just another couple argument behind closed doors, a private conflict that they will not intervene in without crossing a threshold they did not have the right or means to enter. What neighbors heard was the beginning of something far more serious, but from the outside, masked by loud music and locked doors, it sounded like nothing extraordinary, an argument. That sound would persist in person's mind. Loud music, loud voices, and a night that closed without resolution. By the morning of Friday, November 1st, hours had passed since these sounds were heard. Lilian did not return home. Family members waited, expecting her to appear as she normally would. When midday came, and there was still no sign of her, concern grew. And then, shortly before 9 a.m., Lilian's mother received a call from an unknown number, a call that changed everything. The call directed her to Mutegi's house. When she arrived with police, she was told that her daughter had been found dead inside that apartment. Police described the scene. Lilian's body bore visible injuries to her face, along with a stab wound behind her right ear and additional trauma to her lips. The knife, later recovered by investigators, was found at the scene, a kitchen knife, the kind that is meant for food preparation, not violence. At that moment, Lilian's life ended. She had left her family's home hours earlier, believing she was going to spend the night with someone she trusted, someone known to her family. The day had started with communication, clarity, and routine. The day ended in tragedy. Her death did not come from accident or fate. It came from violence within the walls of a home she entered willingly, a reminder of how danger can emerge in places where familiarity and trust once stood. Lilian's final hours were ordinary in plan but horrific in outcome. The facts speak for themselves. She was a working professional, a radio presenter, a daughter, a sister, a partner. She told her family her plans. She was seen alive hours before her death, and just then, just like that, her voice was silenced. Once Lilian's body was discovered, attention immediately shifted to the man she had last been with, George Mwenda Mutegi, her boyfriend, now nowhere to be found. Police quickly established that Mutegi had left the house shortly after the killing. His phone was switched off and attempts to reach him failed. Officers noted signs of deliberate disappearance, no contact with family, no return to his residence, and no digital activity that would easily trace his movements. This raised immediate suspicion and elevated the case from an unexplained death to a targeted homicide investigation. Within hours, Mutegi was formally named the prime suspect. Detectives from Kahawa West police station secured the house, documented the scene, and collected physical evidence. The apartment was treated as an active crime scene, and access was restricted as forensic officers worked inside. As news spread, Lilian's family publicly identified Mutegi as the man who had gone to sea. Her mother confirmed that he was known to them and emphasized that he had not been arrested at that point. The family's appeal was direct. They wanted him found and brought before a court. Police expanded the search beyond Nairobi after preliminary intelligence suggested Mutegi had left the city. The Directorate of Criminal Investigation took over the case, coordinating with officers in other counties. His disappearance was no longer viewed as panic, it was treated as evasion. During this period, detectives pieced together his movements after the killing. They concluded that he had actively avoided detection, staying off the grid and moving locations to avoid capture. The investigation remained tightly focused on him, with no indication of additional suspects. Several days later, Mutegi was located in Kanwa area, Tharaka Nithi County, where he had been hiding. He was arrested by a joint team from DCI headquarters and regional officers, ending the manhunt. At the time of arrest, he did not resist. Following his arrest, police confirmed that he would face murder charges. Investigators stated that the case file would be forwarded to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions after processing and formal statements were completed. Transferred to Nairobi to face the judicial process in connection with the murder of Lilian Achieng Aluko, he was arraigned in court, where the prosecution formally presented the charge of murder to the presiding magistrate. During this stage, the court recorded Mutegi's plea. a procedural requirement that officially places the accused within the criminal justice system and allows the legal process to move forward. Following the arraignment, the courts remanded him in custody, meaning he remained detained while awaiting further proceedings as the prosecution prepared the case for trial and the defense assessed the evidence. The pretrial phase involved a disclosure of investigation materials, including statements from witness, forensic reports, and exhibits recovered from the scene of crime, such as the knife used in the attack. The defense team was expected to examine this material closely, raise legal objections if necessary, and prepare motions regarding procedural matters, such as the admissibility of evidence or applications for bail. According to reports from credible media sources, the matter had not yet proceeded to full trial hearings, and no testimony from witnesses has been made public at that point. This stage of the process primarily involved administrative and preparatory steps, ensuring that when a trial eventually commenced, both prosecution and defense would have access to all relevant information. The news of Lilian Achieng Aluko's death sparked immediate shock and outrage across Nairobi and beyond. Friends, colleagues, and listeners of Radio 44 expressed grief and demanded justice, describing her as a talented presenter whose life had been cut short. Social media amplified these sentiments, with citizens sharing condolence and calling on authorities to act swiftly. Lilian's case became a symbol of the rising problem of intimate partner violence, highlighting how vulnerable women can be even in familiar spaces. The murder also drew attention to national statistics. The National Police Service reported that 97 women had been killed in the 3 months preceding Lilian's death, indicating a significant increase in femicide cases. Experts and women rights organizations pointed out that most victims were killed by current or former partners, and stabbing was the most common method. These partners reinforced concerns about the prevalence of violence within relationships and urgent need to preventative measures. President William Ruto addressed the issue publicly, emphasizing that the rise in killing represented both a criminal and moral problem. This statement acknowledged the society impacts of femicide, the responsibility of law enforcement, and the broader cultural dimension surrounding gender-based violence. While the government pledged resources to tackle the crisis, public reaction reflected a mixture of grief, fear, and frustration as citizens grapple with the reality that women's safety remained precarious in homes and communities. The combination of Lilian's high-profile career, the brutal circumstances of her death, and the broader statistical context turned her murder into focal point for national conversation on femicide. Advocacy groups, journalists, and ordinary citizens alike stressed the need to swift justice and stronger protective measures for women, while others highlighting patterns of domestic violence that often go unreported until tragedy strikes. Even beyond immediate mourning, the case intensified calls for awareness, accountability, and preventative actions, showing how one high-profile incident can shine a spotlight on a wider social crisis.